allowed? I thought prison was supposed to be a form of punishment.
Just after midnight, a confidential briefing marked "Restricted Circulation" began moving through emergency channels. It described a rapidly deteriorating situation unfolding across a major UK metropolitan region. According to internal assessments, multiple systems failed to synchronise within the same hour. Police dispatch logs showed overlapping alerts, transport authorities flagged unexplained slowdowns, local councils reported sudden surges in public safety complaints. Individually, none of these would have raised alarms. Together, they suggested something far more serious. By the time senior officials were notified, the first signs of public unrest had already appeared. Sirens echoed through streets that were normally silent at that hour. Security shutters dropped halfway through evening trade. Families were guided out of shopping centres under vague instructions, citing precautionary measures. Reports suggested that earlier in the evening, a large number of inmates had been released under emergency administrative decisions, framed internally as a temporary response to overcrowding. There was no public announcement, no coordinated messaging, only consequences. Within hours, emergency call centres became saturated. Operators struggled to prioritise incidents that no longer followed predictable patterns. According to sources close to frontline operations, officers were instructed to contain situations rather than pursue arrests. The reasoning was blunt. Resources were insufficient. Coverage was thin. Command needed time to assess what was happening. But time was exactly what the streets did not have. Witness accounts described a shift in atmosphere that spread faster than any official notice. Public spaces emptied unevenly. Some districts went quiet. Others grew tense. Shop alarms rang longer than usual before any response arrived. In residential areas, residents reported groups moving through neighbourhoods with apparent confidence, testing boundaries, observing reaction times. By dawn, it was clear this was not a single night of disruption. Inside analysis rooms, attention turned to data. Investigators overlaid arrest histories, housing placements, legal aid records, and release authorizations. Patterns emerged quickly. According to internal reviews, individuals released under separate decisions were appearing within the same logistical zones. Accommodation contracts pointed to the same intermediaries. Support services overlapped. What initially appeared chaotic began to resemble coordination. Further examination revealed a web of shell organisations operating within legal margins. Charities with minimal oversight, contractors managing housing without transparent accountability, advisory bodies whose recommendations carried authority but little traceability. According to critics reviewing the findings, safeguards had not failed. They had been softened, thresholds lowered, responsibility dispersed. One internal note reportedly summarised it plainly. This wasn't failure, it was facilitation. The system didn't collapse, it was adjusted. A senior official, operating behind layers of administrative distance, became central to the internal discussion. Their decisions, legally defensible in isolation, had collectively accelerated releases, reduced verification, and decentralised enforcement responsibility. No single action violated protocol. Together they reshaped it. In closed sessions, officials questioned whether urgency had been allowed to override consequence. As morning briefings were prepared, public messaging emphasised stability. Statements reassured residents there was no broader threat. But on the ground, the gap between language and reality widened. Parents altered school routes without instruction. Shop owners reinforced entrances preemptively. Frontline officers, speaking anonymously, described a sense of operating within constraints that no longer aligned with public expectation. Emergency meetings followed. Proposals were raised to pause further releases, fast-track deportation reviews, and temporarily tighten border enforcement. According to sources familiar with those discussions, each proposal encountered immediate resistance. Legal advisors warned of challenges. Committees demanded impact studies. Internal correspondence highlighted reputational risk. Action stalled while process advanced. Meanwhile, public sentiment shifted, not explosively, but decisively. Online spaces filled with first-hand accounts that contradicted official assurances. Short videos circulated showing delayed responses, overwhelmed patrols, and visible retreat from certain areas. Polling data, quietly reviewed internally, showed trust indicators falling sharply within days. Fear was present, but something deeper had taken hold: disbelief. By the second night, commanders acknowledged privately that enforcement had become selective. Presence was concentrated where visibility mattered most. Peripheral districts learned to wait. For many residents, this realization marked a turning point. Protection no longer felt universal. It felt conditional. What emerged was not panic, but adaptation. Communities recalibrated expectations. People learned which incidents would receive attention and which would not. According to internal summaries, once that adjustment begins, reversal becomes difficult. Trust does not disappear suddenly. It thins. And as one internal assessment warned, the most dangerous phase of a crisis is not the moment it begins, but the moment it becomes normal. As the days passed, the consequences of that normalization deepened. According to internal assessments, crime reports began clustering in predictable zones, areas already strained by temporary housing and limited patrol coverage. Knife incidents increased near transport corridors. Opportunistic robberies spiked in commercial streets that closed earlier than usual. None of this was dramatic enough to dominate headlines on its own, but together it created a steady drumbeat of unease that people could not ignore. What troubled communities most was the sense of unequal enforcement. Sources close to operational briefings claimed officers were advised to avoid escalation, wherever legal status or jurisdictional ambiguity complicated the outcome. Arrests required additional authorization. Detentions risked legal reversal. In practice, this meant that familiar rules felt inconsistently applied. Long-time residents questioned why minor infractions were pursued, aggressively in some cases, while serious offences in other contexts appeared to dissolve into paperwork. This perception fed frustration. Shop owners spoke of reporting repeat incidents with no follow-up. Parents described warning their children about areas that had once been considered safe. Frontline officers, caught between instruction and expectation, reported declining morale. According to critics, authority does not disappear when it is challenged. It disappears when it hesitates. Public discourse, however, remained tightly managed. Online posts expressing concern were flagged and removed faster than response times improved. Official statements emphasised tolerance, balance, and patience. Polling suggested widespread anxiety, yet few were willing to voice it openly. The risk of social or professional consequences kept many silent. Anger accumulated without release, compressing beneath the surface. Inside government departments, the pressure was visible. Advisory memos warned of long-term legitimacy damage if confidence was not restored. Analysts highlighted historical parallels where selective enforcement accelerated decline rather than preventing it. Yet decisions continued to stall. Court challenges blocked proposed actions. Committees called for further consultation. According to sources familiar with the process, governance moved but without direction. When limited corrective measures were finally announced, they felt cautious to the point of fragility. Reviews were promised. Oversight panels were expanded. Messaging focused on reassurance rather than resolution. By then, communities had already adjusted their expectations downward. Trust had recalibrated. People stopped waiting for clarity and began acting independently to protect themselves. In later internal reviews, one conclusion appeared repeatedly in different language. Collapse rarely arrives with a single event. It develops through delay, hesitation, and the quiet acceptance of lowered standards. Families adapt. Communities withdraw, institutions continue to function, but without the consent that once empowered them. The story, as recorded in those assessments, was never about one night or one decision. It was about what happens when accountability becomes abstract and silence feels safer than speaking. According to sources close to the final review, the unresolved question was not whether the system could recover, but whether it would recognise the moment when recovery was still possible. Because when a nation holds its breath long enough, it eventually forgets how to exhale.